What's up, party people? This is Jude Mossberg here from Facebook, Jude's Junk, Facebook comic book shop, and YouTube channel. Today I want to talk about white pages. There are certain fads that happen in the comic book world that might catch people off guard. I've been hearing that, I don't know, even 10 years ago, people weren't really focused on newsstand versus direct. CGC didn't differentiate. That's why their records don't show the difference between newsstand and direct. And a lot of people didn't care. And then that changed. And then you had the advent of inserts, Mark Jewelers, and then those became rare. And even the quote, Whitman 3-pack directs, some of those are worth more than the original Star Wars. So anything to differentiate and make it different. Well, I've been seeing something a lot more on some of the YouTube channels that talk about prices and values. White pages on a book is becoming more and more important, maybe even critical. When they're looking at a $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 book, that's an old book, a white pages has a significant difference in value, and none of that is reported in GPA Go Collect Cover Price. So you have to go in and look at each one. Also, if you look at some of the notes in the, because I collect only 9/8, some of the notes in a 9/8 will have issues like a spine tick here or a little bend there, and it's a 9/8, but it's reporting these little things that are off. That might be a differentiating factor in one book or another. Many of us are like, hey, a 9/8 is great. I don't really care, But I'm sharing with you that this has become more and more important. Buyers are becoming, I have a lot of buyers that are white pages only. I am a broker, so I shop for books, and I have a client that wants New Mutants 98, basically a modern book. He wants a 9/8, and he wants me to go out and get one for him, and GPA says 90 days is $1,000, and that's before tax, shipping, anything, $1,000. So he sees that one sells on eBay for like $870 just yesterday. And he says, hey, can we get it for less than $950, like down to $900? And I went and looked, and of course it was not a white pager. And the difference between a white pager, which might be 1,000, versus a non-white pager, which might be 870, you're talking about 10 to 15% difference in value. Add that up into a $10,000 book, you're looking at a $1,500 swing, maybe even more. And then as you get older, maybe that white pages make more and more sense. I'm getting ready to post this Daredevil 90 here. And in the past, I have not looked a lot at pages, but in the last 6 months, I've looked more and more because clients are becoming more and more critical. They're looking for anything that's going to differentiate. So they're looking for that. And I just got this. I thought I got a great deal. But I haven't, it took me a couple of weeks to get it in and to put it in inventory. So I was just getting ready to price it. And I saw that one just sold for like less than what I bought it for. And I got it for like 50% off. And then I went in and looked, and it wasn't a white pager. And so I am going to start pricing my books according to other white page sales. So if that Daredevil 90, if a white pager is going for 800 and a non-white pager is going for less than 500, that may be a big difference. Why? That's way more than 10 to 15%. Well, it's 1972. You're getting back there. The books are getting older. What is that? 25, and that's over 50 years old. And so maybe there's fewer white pages. The census doesn't really show that. We don't know how many, but I just went online and checked my comic shop and eBay, and I checked all of them, the 9/8s that are for sale. They're all non-white pagers except for one, and that one was going for sale for over 800, which has been historically the sales. So interesting note, how does this affect all of us who just look at prices? They say buy the book, not the grade. So if you're just looking at GPA, that might be an account for these big swings. I always thought it was auctions versus buy it nows. Well, there's other big swings, and that's the white pages. And Comic Tom and his buddy have been talking about this a lot over the last 3-4 months when they're looking at these big books, especially over 2,000, 10,000. historical sales on some of the even bigger books, a white pager, they're making it a point to show the difference between what a white pager sales and a non-white pager sale. Then you get down to like cream or even brittle for the Silver Age, and these are things to be aware of. You might get 8.5 good-looking Silver Age key, but if it's brittle, makes me think that that's going to command a less price than a cream, and that's going to be command a less price than an off-white, and that's going to command a less price than a white. More and more collectors. Now, I'm not saying I agree with them, but collectors buy what collectors want. So whatever. If some of them don't like the overlap, where the page is, you can see the edge of the the line on it. I've never worried about that. I'm just focused on, but some people don't like the what do you call that? The wrap. Some people don't like the off-centered things. I have people in some clients that want pictures of 9/8 books, and they go through and they're very discerning. I want that 9/8. I don't want those. I don't want any little things wrong with it. So they're buying the book, not the grade. And to each his own. Great. Some of us are still collecting, and we're like, if you've got a 9/8, I'm pretty good with it. But we've been thinking that the variation can't be much. And what I'm saying is, on a New Mutants 98, which is a highly demand big key, right? 10 to 15%, that's $100 to $150 off of a $1,000 book. What about this Daredevil? There's only like 30 in the world, Yeah, 32 blue labels in the world, 1 yellow label in the world. That's it. That's a lot different than a New Mutants 98. There's only 32 of these 9/8s in the world. And if 80% of them are not white pages, then that white pager may command a big premium. Now, there's issues in that with buying or selling, but just something to be aware of as you're buying graded books. A lot of us, when we're getting raws, we're not looking at the color of the pages, especially Silver Age. You want to make sure it's all together and all this stuff. But the more discerning buyers, the ones going for the 9/8s, they want that 9/8 to be different. They want it to be the newsstand. They want it to be Mark Jewelers. They want it to have the right wrap, the clean, crisp wrap. Even the ASM 300, I've been hearing how the edges, some of the edges, is that the right side of your screen? The edges are a little jagged because they're cut. Whereas if you get an ASM 300 that's a very clean cut, it's worth more. Maybe you guys already know this, but this was like, oh, wow, there's a lot that goes into this. So what happens? Be careful on these auction sites. If you get a book that comes in a 9/8 case and it has a little tick on it, and you don't think it's going to crack out at a 9/8 if you're going to get it signed, you send it in an auction house. They can't see that clearly, and they sell a 9/8 with a tick on it. They sell a 9/8 with a thing on it, or maybe you're in an auction when you're going really fast, you're not paying attention to, white pages. Maybe you can't see the wrap. A lot of these auction houses don't even put the back page on $1,000 books. So that's another big issue that I'm finding. So anyways, just another way for people to differentiate their books. Be aware of this as a seller, that your white page may not coincide with the sales of, the 9-day average, or what they call a fair market value on all three of the apps, because this differentiating factor, I think, is 10 to 30%. And that's a big swing. Now, does that mean I have to go and look at the past sales for every book I want to price? That's a lot of work. And I was just started doing that right now. And these 9/8s that I was pulling up, they had notes, like notes, like this has a tick, and I was like, and I know CGC maybe recently started putting notes on for 9/8s. Maybe they've been doing it a long time. I don't know. But it wasn't a new number. It wasn't a newer number. It started with the 3, which was a few years ago. So I don't think they were doing it as much then. But that makes me think now, if there was issues that they have to report on CGC for a 9/8, that might bring the value of the book down. Anyways, it might be new to me. Maybe you guys knew about it. Be aware. FYI, happy hunting, guys.